We are back, and we are down to the last and best division. I'm being totally unbiased here. Tyler, take us through the last division preview before we get going.
Hell yeah, guys. We're talking about the National League West Division, home of the 8 seasons in a row champion, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Also, just real quick before we get into that, opening day, T-minus 10 days away. So this is this is the last full week of spring training games. And next Thursday, April 1st, will be opening day. So we're looking forward to that. So we're finally down to our last division here. So let's get right into it. We're obviously leading off with the Los Angeles Dodgers, who in 2020 finished first place, best record in baseball at 43-17, and won the 2020 World Series. God, that feels so fucking good to say. All right, in the offseason, they added even more. Obviously, the big one was signing starting pitcher Trevor Bauer. They also re-signed their longtime third baseman Justin Turner. They also re-signed their bullpen arm Blake Trinan, and they also acquired another bullpen piece in Corey Knebel. Their projected rotation: Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Trevor Bauer, Julio Urias, Dustin May, David Price. You can throw Tony Gonsolin in there as well. I'm going to ask Alex a little bit later about that kind of bottom half of the rotation, how that's going to shape up. The projected lineup: catcher Will Smith, first baseman Max Muncy, second baseman Chris Taylor / Gavin Lux, shortstop Corey Seager, third baseman Justin Turner, and the outfielders are AJ Pollock, Cody Bellinger, and Mookie Betts. The good, obviously, fresh off our first World Series championship in 32 years. And we got even a little bit better, especially on the pitching side. And right now, there's really no one in sight for this Dodgers championship window. Looks like we're going to be, rolling for a few years here. And, 2021 should be just as good, if not better than 2020 for the Dodgers. The bad, it's kind of hard to pick bad with this team. To be picking, to be totally honest, I think that the closer role is a little bit in question. Kenley Jansen kind of ended the season not on the best note. He's been the closer for a very long time. Dave Roberts in spring training has pretty much given him full confidence as that closer. But we'll see. He's kind of getting a little bit up there. I don't know if he quite has the same stuff. So I think their closer role is a little bit of a question mark. And obviously the enemy from the South, San Diego Padres, got a lot better, and they're going to make a real threat for the Dodgers in that division. So Alex, obviously you're the other Dodger fan on this podcast, so I gave you the Dodgers talk about here. So for first question I want to ask you is about the starting pitching rotation. That we got a ton of depth, which is always a good thing. I think it's one of the Dodgers' MO. They've always had good starting pitching depth. But typically, you have 5 starting pitchers in your rotation. I named about 7 or 8 of them, in my rotation. So if you're Dave Roberts, starting opening day, past Kershaw, Buehler, and Bauer, which are the obvious top 3, who kind of round out the 4 and 5 spot for you?
Yeah, I mean, they're all 7 of those guys are going to have starts this season. I mean, that's just the way baseball's played now. Yeah, after the top 3, though, I think you have to give Julio Urias the nod at the 4. One, because he's another lefty to break up the 2 righties going back to back in Buehler and Bauer. So I like Julio Urias. His stuff is probably the best out of those other 3, which is insane to say because those other guys have great stuff. But, Julio Urias was the Dodgers' top pitching prospect after Clayton Kershaw for years. And then he, took a little bit slower to develop because of some shoulder issues. Walker Buehler came on. But so I'm going to go Julio Urias number 4. And then might come as a little bit as a surprise, but I'm going to go Tony Gonsolin number 5. I think that his stuff just plays different than Buehler and Bauer. As that third righty in the rotation. He's got a devastating changeup. And, those other 2 guys are very fastball, slider, curveball based. And that changeup is kind of almost like under the radar pitch throughout baseball. And I think giving, especially if you're going to face, say, the series is going to start, you're facing Bauer game 1, Urias game 2, Gonsolin game 3. That's 3 totally separate looks that these batters have to go through. And I think that changeup of Gonsolin is a deciding factor. But
I have a question for you.
I'd go for it.
So Gonsling started the season off in the bullpen, and the only reason why he was promoted to like a starting pitch role is because David Price sat out. So, and even like towards the end, like he's not really built for that starting pitcher role long term. Towards the end, he started falling off there. So, do you have any concerns with Gonsling going long term? Because he was actually like coming into last season, he was in the bullpen. He wasn't projected to pitch as many innings as he did.
I mean, not really, because what if you go four? Gonsolin throws 4 innings, and then Dustin May throws 4 innings, and you piggyback those guys. That's 8 elite innings, and then you just got to get through one more. Jansen, Trinan. David Price has already said that he's willing to take any role that the Dodgers will give him. I think his stuff could play up in the bullpen. Just like we saw Kenta Maeda stuff play up in the bullpen during the playoffs a couple years ago. I think these last 4 guys, Urias, Gonsolin, May, and Price, are all going to interchange. But I just think giving teams different looks is tough. So I'm going to stick with Gonsolin for right now. It might have been kind of a shocker, but.
Yeah, Gonsolin's a good pick. I think he's definitely the most underrated starting pitcher on that rotation, for good reason. There's just a lot of really good starting pitchers in that rotation. For me, of those 4, I agree with you with Julio. I think he's definitely going to be probably that 4th guy. And it's kind of that 5th, is really kind of a question mark. For me personally, of those kind of last 3 guys, Dustin May is probably my favorite pitcher to watch. Just the movement on his pitches and how nasty that guy can be. Like you said, that can be super nasty coming out of the bullpen too, and that could be super valuable. You can have him pitch, 3-4 days a week out of the bullpen versus just once every 5 games. So, it's definitely a good problem to have. So it'll be interesting to see what Dave Roberts decides to do. Another interesting position battle is at second base. So Gavin Lux is kind of the new up and coming guy of their system, who he hasn't really kind of fully made hasn't really solidified himself as the second baseman yet. And then you got Chris Taylor, who's been around for a long time, who is absolutely tearing up in spring training right now. I think, he could arguably deserve that full-time starting position at second. With Kike gone, obviously that kind of brings in some opportunity there at second base. So Alex, I just want to know kind of what your thoughts are, opening day second baseman, who are you going with?
I think Chris Taylor's going to get the job. I still think Gavin Lux will make the team. And I think eventually that spot is still going to be Gavin Lux's spot. But right now I think Chris Taylor deserves it. But if Gavin Lux continues to play well, they're actually, if I'm kind of thinking about it now, they're a little bit right-handed heavy, and Gavin Lux being a lefty will be actually really beneficial kind of later on. Because really only lefties in their lineup are Bellinger and Muncy, where the rest of them are all, it's pretty right-handed. I guess Seager's left-handed. I totally forgot about him. Okay, change my mind.
World Series MVP.
Fuck all what I just said right then. I still think Taylor. I think Taylor takes the spot to begin with, but now with Kike gone, his versatility is going to come in key. Being able to play short, being able to play all 3 outfield spots. So I think Taylor starts as the opening day second baseman. Gavin Lux will take over, and Chris Taylor will go through in that utility role, but he'll still get plenty of at bats.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, Chris Taylor's going to play everywhere. I think Gavin Lux eventually will take over that second base position, but I think he's got to earn it. I don't think he's quite shown at the big league level consistency at that spot. So I think once he kind of starts going on a tear, I think he'll kind of plug him in as that full-time second baseman. As you mentioned, Chris Taylor can play anywhere, so he'll be in there almost every night anyway. But I think Gavin Lux first has to earn the spot. I don't think he's quite earned that quite yet, but I think he will. All right, so final question for you, Alex, here before we move on. The next team we're going to be talking about is the San Diego Padres. I think this is probably the most hyped up rivalry in baseball this year between the Dodgers and the Padres. It's going to be an absolute battle between these two guys. Just your general thoughts and just what you're looking forward to for this rivalry this season.
Yeah, every single game is going to feel like a playoff game. And the Padres did get better, but I still don't think they're better than the Dodgers. I've heard a million people say this, but it's totally true. They're the little brothers, and they've got to prove it that they can beat the big bad Dodgers. The Padres have been awful for forever. The Dodgers have been the most consistent team in that division. I do think the Padres are probably the second or third best team in baseball. Can they beat the Dodgers in a 7-game series? Sure. Will they? I don't know. But yeah, it's the best rivalry is a tough word to say because they're not really rivals when they've never been that good. But
Fair.
it's still probably the most exciting series. People are going to have those series circled on their maps, on their schedules or whatever. It's going to be good for baseball. August 14th or whatever, Dodgers Padres Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday series is still going to be really fucking exciting. Much better than a Pirates Marlins series in that same time frame. So it's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. So
it sounds like they may not have had a historical rivalry, but this is kind of how when teams are good, especially now the Padres are good, this is the year, including last year that they start to create that rivalry.
Yeah. 100%.
And I think that we might see a rivalry really start to bud starting this year, especially if they face each other in the playoffs. Right. And,
I think Padres fans have thought this has been a rivalry for a long time.
Of course.
And Dodgers fans have just been like, you're the Padres, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like it's Dodgers Giants. They've been rivals since the 50s and further back. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Traden. It's gonna be so much fun to watch.
Really excited. So let's talk about that team from San Diego, the San Diego Padres, Slam Diego. 2020, they finished second in this division with a 37-23 record, and they were swept by the Dodgers in the NLDS in the playoffs. Off season, as we mentioned, got a hell of a lot better, especially with their starting pitching. They traded for Blake Snell from the Tampa Bay Rays. They traded for Yu Darvish from the Chicago Cubs and Joe Musgrove from the Pittsburgh Pirates. So those are three. I mean, Darvish and Snell are aces on pretty much any staff, and then Musgrove is a very, very solid middle of the rotation guy. To add to an already pretty solid starting rotation, this is an absolute star-studded pitching rotation. So let's talk about the rotation. So Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, Nelson Lamet, Chris Paddock, and Joe Musgrove. That's a 1 through 5, just absolute studs. The projected lineup will be catcher Austin Nola, first baseman Eric Hosmer, second baseman Jake Cronenworth, shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr., third baseman Manny Machado, and the outfielders are Tony Pham, Trent Grisham, and Will Myers. The good for this team, it's already a good team that, as I mentioned, just got better. Arguably, they're the most exciting team to watch in baseball. I mean, I know Tatis Jr. Has so much flair, so much excitement, and he can back up, kind of the flair and the excitement that he brings. Slam Diego took over the nation last year, and for good reason. And as I said, I think they have a legit shot at taking down the Dodgers. Do I think they will? Of course not. Am I biased? Yes. But if there is a team that can do it, it is the San Diego Padres team. They are that good. So the bad, I would say the one thing about the Padres is at times their offense can be inconsistent. I think they obviously, Machado and Tatis, are going to be there night in, night out. But past that, they have a lot of guys that just are pretty streaky. And then I think their bullpen identity, I don't think they really have a closer quite yet. And just kind of where their bullpen lines up is a little bit of a question mark for me. But other than that, I mean, this team is going to be very, very good. So James, you got the San Diego Padres here. So the first question I want to ask is everyone's going to compare the Padres to the Dodgers. So I want to know, stacking up against this Dodgers team and this Padres team, what do you think the Padres' strengths over the Dodgers are, and what do you think and what do you think their weaknesses are compared to the Dodgers?
First off, you owe me a shot because you said his name was Tony Pham and it's actually Tommy Pham.
Damn it.
Come on, man. Even I knew that. Strengths and weaknesses, though. Earlier, we just talked about the Dodgers and how great their starting pitching is, right? But I think that a Padres' strength over the Dodgers is the Padres' starting pitching, as in true starting pitchers. Like I'm talking pitchers that can go 6 to 7 innings. Alex just made a good point earlier, and he said, Gonsolin and Dustin May will go 4-4. I mean, that's a starting pitcher, but I want innings eaters. I want people who can go out there and just rack up a ton of innings and do a really good job and be efficient while doing it. Yu Darvish was the Cy Young runner-up last year. Blake Snell was a damn good pitcher, and he had an innings cap. I mean, now he probably won't have an innings cap because we're not relying on analytics all that much as the Tampa Bay Rays did. Musgrove always been consistent. When you have Dinelson Lamet as your number 5 guy, that says a lot about the entire rotation. Like, that guy has elite skill. He's had glimpses of greatness. He's just been kind of hampered by shoulder and elbow injuries as of late. But as a whole, like, he's going to be very exciting to watch. Going over to a weakness, you just mentioned it earlier, bullpen. That's huge. There is no consistent closer. There's not one guy that the Padres can go to right away. While, there's a lot of pitchers on the Dodgers who can switch back and forth between a starter and a bullpen guy. They can go 4-4 once again. He just keeps coming back to that. The one thing I am kind of concerned about with the starting pitcher of the Dodgers, though, is Walker Buehler. That guy has always had an innings cap. I don't think he's pitched over 100 pitches in a season, or 100 innings in a season. For some reason, Dave Roberts and that pitching staff is bringing him along really slowly. He's elite. He's really good. But I don't know why they don't let him go for more. Going back to strength over the Dodgers for the Padres, and that's the exciting factor. People want to come watch the Padres more than the Dodgers because they're San Diego. They do fun things. They do bat flips. They make baseball fun to watch. While, I feel like the Dodgers are more like the San Antonio Spurs. They're kind of like always good, always consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get from that. While on the other hand, it's like, I'm going to switch sports, but the Padres are kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs. They're explosive. Like, people come to watch them perform. It's fun to watch. But then going back to the last thing in the weaknesses of the Padres, and I think it's the consistent hitters. For over the last 8 years, the Dodgers have always been consistent hitters, consistent in every single way. And hits, ERA, just scoring in general. I mean, last year they led the entire MLB in offense. Those guys are consistent. They have really good plate IQ. The Padres will hit home runs every once in a while, but the Dodgers will always score. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. I do think honestly, looking at it, both lineups, I would say that probably the Padres do have a better starting pitching rotation. It is close. I don't think it's obviously better, but I mean, I think just having, a Snell, a Darvish, and a Lamet is just 1, 2, 3. But then you got Kershaw, Buehler, Bauer. So I mean, I don't know. It's going to be super, super fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see how these two teams stack up. As Alex mentioned, every single series these two teams are playing are going to be on the calendar. Everyone's going to be watching them. So I think a lot of people still have the Dodgers winning this division. But the Padres will probably end up with the second best record in the National League. With that said, James, do you think the Padres pull an upset and take the division crown from the Dodgers for the first time in 8 years?
There's always a chance. Don't ever count anything out, especially at this point in this season. It's not even start of the season yet. Don't count anything out. That being said, it's really going to come down to which team goes on a run for longer. Baseball is all about hot and cold, all using momentum. If teams get hot, they're crazy. You saw that with San Diego last year. They got hot for a stretch and they were scoring like crazy, hitting home runs every single game, multiple home runs, grand slams. It's going to come down to who goes on a run. It'll be close. Dodgers are probably going to win it, but I mean, there's always a chance.
I was just about to say that was a very cute answer. I want a yes or no.
Yes.
Oh. All right.
Fuck you, Dodgers fans.
Yeah. James thinks the Padres will win the NL West title in 2021. We'll see. I'm super excited for these two teams to go at it. So I'm just excited to get this season rolling. So let's move on to the other three teams in this division. Just we gotta talk about them because I talked about all the other teams. So
like the other teams are lepers to you, dude.
They pretty much are. I mean, it's really Dodgers, Padres. Anyway, we'll get into it. Let's start with the third place finishers in 2020, the San Francisco Giants. They finished with a 29-31 record. Only missed the playoffs because of a tiebreaker situation there, but they became very close for being a playoff team last year. Which we probably would have gotten a Dodgers Giants playoff series, which would have been really cool. Which I was kind of hoping for that, but didn't end up working out. In the offseason, they signed infielder Tommy La Stella, starting pitcher Alex Wood, and starting pitcher Anthony DeScalfani. Their projected rotation: Kevin Guzman, Johnny Cueto, Anthony DeScalfani, Logan Webb, and Tyler Beatty. Their projected lineup: catcher Buster Posey, first baseman Brandon Belt, second baseman Donovan Solano, shortstop Brandon Crawford, third baseman Evan Longoria, and outfielders Mike Yastrzemski, Alex Dickerson, and Mauricio Dubon. The good of this team, I think they're starting to show signs of life. I think, like I said, they kind of made a run for a playoff spot. And even in 2019, around the All-Star break, they were kind of getting hot and were a fringe wildcard team at that point. So I think this team is starting to kind of, their younger players are starting to show up a little bit. And I think starting to kind of show signs of, this Giants team can start competing again soon. The bad, obviously it's just an older team. I think a lot of the guys that were around for those World Series runs are starting to get a little bit older. That kind of core is starting to fizzle out a little bit. And then obviously, as I mentioned, the Dodgers and Padres are running this division. So I don't think the Giants have any realistic chance. So Traden, I wanted to ask you about these Giants. An interesting component of this Giants team, as I mentioned, that kind of that older core of those World Series wins. Posey, Belt, Cueto, and Crawford, all those guys are free agents after this season, which is kind of interesting thing because maybe they'll be available at the trade deadline, or they're just going to walk, or maybe they'll come back and they'll kind of stick around. So I want to know of those four guys, how many of them do you think will stick around moving forward?
I honestly think it's going to be tough it really is all dependent on how they play. And that's really what it boils down to. If I were a betting man, I would bet that maybe one of them come back, but I focused on the three big names, which were Belt, Crawford, and obviously the face of the franchise, Buster Posey. Those three guys are probably not making it back, and unless they really show that they can still play high quality baseball. Brandon Belt specifically, I think he's a little bit more of I think they're probably going to let him go just because I think that there's someone that can take his spot. He'd have to have a really good 2021 for it to make sense, because look at, the older guys take some money. And if you're not a quality starter and you're not going to be, and you can't play, often or every game, it's a lot easier to just go and sign someone who, a younger prospect who can. Brandon Crawford, same type of deal. I mean, Brandon Crawford is, he has a long decorated resume. Let's be real here. I mean, 2 World Series rings, 2 All-Star selections, 3 Golden Glove awards, and a Silver Slugger award. I mean, he's a shortstop that has he's been there, but as of late hasn't. And the question is there going to be someone that takes a spot? Marco Luciano is one of if not the best prospect in baseball, and he's in that system. And if he makes strides, Crawford's future is probably accounted for. And then you look at Buster Posey. This one's interesting. So they do have an option to sign him for that last year, and I think that 4 years ago, I think that everyone thought, oh, he's going to be back for that last year, right? But because it's such a high dollar number, you just can't. You just don't know. That being said, him opting out last year really showed his value, because I think that his replacement was. I mean, right now his replacement is in the minors now because Posey's back. He did not have the greatest game, and it really shows what kind of value that a catcher of his caliber is to that team. And he's a fan favorite. So it's a tough question. I don't think any of them are going to be able to make it back just simply because the money just doesn't work. And I just don't think it's easy to sign when you're a team that's not, the Dodgers or the Padres. It's hard to sign guys that are older, that aren't going to solidify your future, that are really kind of in more of a win now situation. So I don't see them coming back next year. That I really hope to see. I would love to see, one of them come back at least. But if you're looking for the future, it's probably not the right move to resign them unless you're the Padres or you can beat the Padres or the Dodgers, and you just can't now. I mean, like you said, there's 2 teams and then there's the rest of everybody else in that division.
Yeah. It's definitely hard to imagine Buster Posey with any other team. As you mentioned,
It's true.
he is the face of that franchise. He's like, Clayton Kershaw on the Dodgers, or so it's a tough thing to envision. So I feel like just for the fans that have Buster Posey on the team, I think they might keep him around for a few more years, until they find a legit replacement for him, or until those replacements are ready. So I feel like Buster Posey will come back in some way, even if it's like a 1 or 2 year contract, but we'll see. I think the most valuable trade piece of those four is probably Brandon Crawford. Yeah. I think that team, a contending team, could definitely use a guy like that. He's got a lot of postseason experience. So I feel like, Crawford is a guy that I could see getting traded.
Or to get traded too.
That I don't know. That it really depends on who needs it. Some team might their shortstop might get injured. They might need a shortstop. They might just want a guy with some postseason experience. Maybe Crawford's the better option than what they have. If Cueto has a pretty good start, if he has a good first half, I could see him going to a contender that needs pitching, which most times people need pitching, and it's always good to have depth at that position. So it'll be interesting to see those four guys. I think come trade deadline time, it'll be really, really interesting. So last question for you, Traden. This Giants team, like as I said, they were in the conversation for a wild card berth the last couple of seasons, despite no one really thinking they were going to do a whole lot. Do you see that happening again here in 2021?
Yeah, I see them taking that second wild card spot, actually. And the reason why is because they literally didn't make it because of a tiebreaker situation, and they didn't even have the improved pitching that they do now. Which it's not like they're going to compete against the Dodgers or Padres. I'm not going to come on here and say that, but they had a rough time pitching last year, and they've improved that on the back end, or at least behind the scenes. The stats show that last year the bullpen blew 11 save opportunities. If you convert half of them, you're in the playoffs. I mean, it's that simple. You were in the playoffs if you convert half of those. So that's a. Second, I think that the schedule that they released is actually a little bit conducive to helping them out, because they play a lot of the AL West, who while we all agree is going to be stronger, only 4 teams of the 5 were even above 500. The rest weren't. So you're playing teams that are probably not as strong, giving you a little bit of a chance to get some wins in there. It's kind of more of a statistical type of an argument, but nonetheless, it helps. And then the last one, going back to your first question about those 3 guys or 4 guys that are on their last year. This is, especially when you're talking about Belt, Crawford, and Posey, this is their last time probably with this squad. This is the squad that won 2 World Series in the mid 2010s, right? Like these are the 3. There you go. They're the last 3 from that era. And to me, I think they're going to look at each other and say, guys, this is it. And they're going to play their hearts out. And I know that that's kind of a cliche, but when guys are at their their end at a team that they were drafted and played for so long, and they've had success, that gives you a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. And I think that they're going to come back strong. And I would not be surprised if they make the second wild card spot.
That's a pretty hot take. But I like it. I think there's a lot of other teams in the National League. I mean, obviously the division, Dodgers or Padres, whoever doesn't win the division is going to get that first wild card. And then, you got the Mets, you got a lot of teams in the East that are very good. That I think are probably better than the Giants, in my opinion. But hey, like I said, I think a lot of people kind of this Giants team, they weren't even considering them as contenders, and they surprised some people. So you never know what to expect. That second wild card spot is going to be an interesting battle for sure. Moving on to the 4th place finishers in 2020, the Colorado Rockies finished with a 26-34 record. Off-season, only notable signing is they signed infielder Greg Bird, who at one point was with the Yankees, had a pretty promising career, but then just been riddled with injuries and really hasn't been that productive of a player. But we'll see if he can turn it around in Colorado. The projected rotation, German Marquez, Kyle Freeland, Antonia Senzatella, John Gray, and Austin Gomber. Projected lineup: catcher Elias Diaz, first baseman Josh Fuentes, second baseman Brandon Rogers, shortstop Trevor Story, third baseman Ryan Mahone, outfielders Ramiel Tapia, Charlie Blackmon, and Sam Hillard. The bad is they traded away their franchise in Nolan Arenado. I mean, that guy you just signed him to a long-term contract, and 2 years later, he's gone. I think there's a lot of troubles in this front office. I don't think that them and the players really see eye to eye. I think there's a big reason why Arenado left. The bullpen is a mess. This team, I think, is heading towards a really bad direction. The only really good I see with this team is Trevor Story. That guy's a stud. He's a very fun player to watch, but honestly, I feel like the Colorados are going towards a downward spiral, which is really a shame because just only a couple years ago, they almost won the NL West. And they were, contending for playoff spots. They just had some bad signings, some bad trades that didn't work out. But, I think it's a real shame that this Rockies team has gone this direction. But that's where we are. So I see this Rockies team just being absolutely abysmal in 2021. I really don't think there's a whole lot of hope there, honestly. I think they're going to kind of slowly trade away their pitchers. They're going to trade away everyone and just kind of start fresh. So moving on to the final team.
Any Rockies fans watching or listening,
yeah,
I think they're out.
Sorry, people. Sorry, the Colorado fans out there. 2020 fifth place finishers, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Probably one of the biggest disappointments in baseball last season. In the offseason, they signed relief pitcher Joakim Soria. Their projected rotation: Madison Bumgarner, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Caleb Smith, and Luke Weaver. Their projected lineup: Carson Kelly, catcher, first baseman Christian Walker, second baseman Eduardo Escobar, shortstop Nick Ahmed, third baseman Asdrubal Carrera, and outfielders are Ketel Marte, David Peralta, and Cole Calhoun. The bad. Pitching is not that strong at all. Both, it's very inconsistent. You got a couple of guys that are pretty solid, but just depth wise, I don't think their pitching is all that great. And they're just an average team in like I said, a very top heavy division. So there's not a lot of hope there. I don't think. The good is this lineup is loaded with talent, and I don't think that they're that far from contending. If they can shore up some pitching stuff, I think this could be a very good team. I had them making the playoffs last year, and they finished last place. So it's kind of a confusing team to me. I feel like they should be a lot better than they are. So Alex, you're going to pick up the slack here for Eric and help me cover the D-backs here. So I don't know if you're as confused about the D-backs as I am. But looking at this division as it stands, with the Dodgers and Padres being so prominent, and this team as I feel is not that bad. I think that they're better than they were in 2020. I think they're only a couple pieces away from being pretty legit contenders. But with that division in mind, with how good those top two teams are, do you keep trying to add pieces and contend, or do you just start the rebuild process and wait for kind of the Dodgers Padres dominance to kind of fizzle out?
Yeah, I agree with you. A little confusing. The contract they gave to Mad Bum is definitely looking like a mistake right now. He's not the same guy that he was. I think if you're the Diamondbacks, you have to think realistically. You're not competing with those top two teams. You're just not. The Padres are young and electric, and they're going to be good for a good amount of time. The Dodgers are the best team in baseball, and they always have deep pockets, and they're never bad. Like they're just never bad. So you're going to have to contend with that. It's part of the deal being in the NL West. What I think the D-backs need to do is see how this season is progressing, and then they need to pick one or the other. They really don't want to be one of these teams that kind of goes along this middle ground for 3 or 4 years, and then this core of decent young players gets old. They have bad contracts underneath them, and then they have to sell off because they aren't a big, Phoenix is a huge place, but they're not a huge market team. They're not the Phillies. They're not the Red Sox. They're not the Dodgers, the Giants, the Yankees, some of these teams. So I think you build around your young core. Zach Gallen is a great pitcher. Christian Walker, Ketel Marte, Merrill Kelly, even the catcher, they have good young position players and one good young starting pitcher. If it's going poorly, sell off Cole Calhoun, sell off David Peralta. No one's probably taking that Mad Bum contract unless you're sending a bunch of money with it, unless he turns it around. So I know that doesn't really super answer the question, but as the season goes along, if you're already, it's June 1st and you're 15 to 20 games back of these two top heavy teams, sell the vets that are coming into expiring contracts, get back some young pieces, and then kind of wait it out. Do I think that they could possibly make a run at a wild card? Yeah. Do I think they're going to actually do it? No. I don't think they'll get that second one, but I think they're going to be much better than they were last year.
Yeah, I agree. I think this team, as you mentioned, they have. I mean, you look at that lineup. There's a lot of good young talent in that lineup, and they're only going to get better. And as I mentioned, the rotation is not there. It's not deep enough to contend. But make a trade. Sign a guy. These are players in your lineup are going to be good for a long time. I think this core is legit, and I think that they can easily contend with just a few more pieces. So in my opinion, I feel like they should add. If I was a D-backs fan, despite what the division looks like, just compete, and you never know what can happen. So moving on, we're going to do the final division predictions here with the final standings. So I got the Dodgers obviously winning the NOS for the 9th consecutive season with 105 wins. The Padres will finish second with 98 wins. The Diamondbacks are going to be around 80 wins, then Giants with 78, and the Rockies with a lowly 60. So James, what do you got?
Padres, Dodgers, Los Gigantes, D-backs, and Rockies.
Traden.
Exactly what he said.
All right. Wow. And then Alex.
Dodgers, Padres, Giants, D-backs, Rockies. Dodgers beat the Padres by 10 plus games.
Wow.
Right now. 10
Love
games.
that.
Let's make a bet.
I'd be willing. Okay, go ahead.
How much?
$100. $100.
Oh my
It's
God.
less than 10.
Oh.
Fuck it. Sure.
Oh my gosh.
They just got
I'm
a lot
getting
more
married, right?
interesting.
I don't need the money.
This is a long.
Let's do 50. Let's do 50.
I used to agree to 100.
Yeah, and then I just realized that can't shake on it. Never met James in person. Boom.
I don't know how
Are
you
you
do
really
it.
getting a good challenge and go to 50?
James, I'm getting married. It's very expensive.
That's
Trade
not my
knows what's
fault.
up.
I say take the 50.
They just sold the house for 600,000.
God. I owe it on it.
50 it is.
All right, you heard it here first. $50 over if the Dodgers win the division by more than 10 games. Alex wins 50. If they win it by less, James wins 50. So tune into this NL West division battle. It's going to be awesome, as I mentioned. Next week, opening day. It's going to be exciting. I'm super excited, and that rounds out the 6th and final division preview for Major League Baseball 2021. Alex,
Thank you, Tyler. James, last year when we bet money for baseball, I took all of it from you. So I'm going to plan on doing that again.
Those are the Angels.
Yeah, it was not a good bet for you. But yeah, thank you, Tyler.